whole purpose behind the clinics is to help people do it. You can do it, we can help. And of course now we always tell them that, more savings, more doing. All right. And so if they come here, we can help them put their projects together. We can help them learn the skills that they need. And we offer the clinics as a time and place in which they can come and actually set aside some time to actually learn about what the project is they're doing.
Today's class is going to be on tiling, so this is open to the customers. Whatever class they're interested in learning, this will be tile. So we're going to do a floor, maybe a shower, maybe a backsplash, depending on what the customers need today. Well, welcome to tile class this morning. I'm glad you could all join us. We're here to teach you how to do your own tile jobs at your home and try to make it as easy and as cost effective as possible. So what kind of tile projects are we working on today?
Kitchen.
Kitchen, floor or backsplash? Backsplash.
I want to do the bathroom.
Bathroom, floor, shower, the whole thing, or just the floor? The whole thing. Are we doing it above a tub?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And you, sir?
Bathroom also.
Bathroom. Now, is this bathroom in an upstairs or a downstairs?
It's downstairs.
Downstairs, basement bathroom. We're going to do the floor. We're doing the wall and shower also?
Well, yep.
And you, sir?
Family room.
Family room, the whole family room. We've got some ideas for you. And you, sir?
Bathroom.
Bathroom. Upstairs? Okay. So we're on a wood subfloor. So what we're going to begin talking about is how to make that upstairs floor turn into that basement floor as far as construction goes. The problem that everyone has with their tile jobs is that the tile cracks or the grout cracks, things come loose. The reason that happens most of the time is wood expands and contracts. So what we want to do is we want to build a concrete floor on your wood floor. Do you have existing linoleum on that floor now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you do. And you, sir, also?
All those plastic inserts now.
Okay, so you've got a tub surround you're going to actually take out. Are you going to put in a shower then or a tub surround again?
I want to put in a shower and stuff. I really
Okay.
don't know what I want to do yet.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, we're going to begin with the floors in these spaces. Now, if you have the existing vinyl floor, the sheet vinyl, that's common. You can remove that if you want to. It's not difficult to do, but it is a little messy. And I warn you that your vanity is usually sitting on top of it. Your toilet, of course, is on top of it. And all you gain when you remove that is a 1/4 inch. The vinyl is glued to a 1/4 inch Luan or birch face plywood to give you a smooth surface. So if you remove it, you're going to gain a 1/4 inch. Now, if you would like to know how to do that, I can run through how to do that the easiest way. Otherwise, what I usually recommend is we leave that sheet vinyl and we put a cement board right over the top of it. I have 2 different cement board products I brought out here today. Underneath on this side is a true cement board. It is made of cement and it's got a fiber wrap to give it strength. Under here, this is actually cement fiber board. So it is a cement fiber. The difference between the two is an engineering feat. This product ends up easier to work with. It is more rigid. It can be cut with any saw, although it will, of course, dull your saw blades, but it can also be scored. This break on this side, because they're actually both 3x5 boards, this break was actually one score with a little safety utility knife, snap, and it breaks right down that line. The cement board, you will need a masonry wheel to scribe and cut that with. What I like to talk about is the differences in them and how they apply to your project. If we were to take a column of water, mount that column of water, one on the cement board, one on an equal thickness of the fiber board, you would need a bucket underneath the cement board. That board will saturate immediately when you release the water, and it's all going to go through right now. The cement fiber board, on the other hand, is going to saturate very slowly. You could put a teacup down there because once it saturates, it's just going to drip through very slowly. So from that engineering perspective, if I'm doing a shower or a surround where I'm going to have water on the wall, I would rather put up the true cement board, so if anything ever leaks through, gravity is going to pull that through immediately down into the tub or the shower pan and then down the drain. If I'm going to do a floor, I would prefer to have the cement fiberboard down because that's going to protect the subfloor from that moisture leaking through if we get into a leak situation. Beyond that, both products are equal to do either job. Now, as I said, they come in the 3x5 sheets, so then the only question we have left is how far apart are your floor joists? So, your wood floor upstairs, do you know how far apart your floor joists are?
16 on center.
16 on center. That is a traditional way for most houses built up until the newer modern houses. If you are 16 inches on center, you can get by with a 1/4 inch thick cement board. So now we're not adding much height. If your joists are farther apart than that, you're going to have to go up to the 1/2 inch cement board to give you that structural integrity. The Home Depot itself, because we install floors also, we will not install a tile floor on a truss floor that is 24 inches apart. The reason being, those trusses support a ton of weight. We don't worry about the weight we're putting on, but as they get farther apart, you can actually bounce your floor in between there. And now that's going to lead to cracking of tile. So the Home Depot as a company would not even install over that. I know there are a lot of contractors that will, and they do a fine job, and most of the time there's not an issue. It just can't be a guarantee. So in your case, we're going to say we're 16 on center. We're going to put down a 1/4 inch cement board. So what you're going to need is you're going to need a cement-based thin set and a trowel. I'm going to grab a trowel here. 1/4 by 1/4 by 1/4 square notch. So we're actually talking the height, the width, and the depth of each notch on this. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question.
Sure.
If I'm doing a backsplash, what do you recommend for? You recommend the cement fiber or the cement board?
Well, now here's the nice thing: if you're doing a backsplash, there's really no moisture. The only reason you would ever use a cement board is if you're doing a floor, because once again, all of your subfloor structure is built out of wood. It expands and contracts. If you're doing a shower, a wet area, you're going to use a cement board because we don't want moisture in the sheetrock. My tiling actually began many years ago when my parents bought a house built by Royal Oaks. It was in Woodbury, with the first development in Woodbury. That's how long ago this happened. And what happens in construction is they're set up in an assembly line process. The framers come in and frame, and they move on to the next house, and then the sheetrockers come in, and so it's step by step. The tile guys come in and they tile the house, they move to the next house. I am guessing, based on my career at that point, that no one ever sealed the grout. Because down the road, everybody's soap dish fell off the wall into the bathtub. The wall was rotted behind. You remove that, and there is black wood down there, which means we're now growing mold and rotting the wood. And that's how I actually began repairing these mistakes. So if it's a wet space, we want cement board on the walls. A backsplash, when you're moving into your kitchen, you don't want to rip out your wall that's there and put something else, because you're really not talking water. So you get a little overspray, a little splash here and there, but we're not talking moist. So if we're doing a backsplash, we're going to go right straight onto our sheetrock. And if we're doing a wall, like in my house, I have a wall of slate, goes all the way up to the ceiling. I'm going directly onto the sheetrock. There's no reason to change those. And even in that wet space, so in that bathroom, if we're putting the cement board up, that cement board only has to go in the shower area, not the rest of the bathroom. So they come as a 3-foot by 5-foot sheet. That makes it light enough you can carry it and get it in and out of the house. 6 foot high is the highest you would ever have to go with cement board in a shower situation, because you're not going to get water above your shoulders on that wall. Your shower heads are set high. They're going to project the water down on you. It's going to hit you and deflect downward, which is why my parents had trouble. That soap dish sits right down about there, and that's where all the water hits that flat surface, and that's where the rot began. Okay, so in a true shower situation, 2 cement boards, you're 6 foot high. The rest can be green rock, which was moisture resistant sheetrock, which is what they used to build the houses of back when my parents had their house built. That was the new innovative wall covering, moisture resistant. Now we didn't have to worry about the lath and plaster on our walls. Okay? Does that answer your question for you?
Yes, sir.
All right, good. And anytime you do have questions, feel free to interrupt. I'm open. This is set up to try to help you. So if I say something that confuses you, please interrupt me and right away, and we'll go over that.
What kind of background do you have to teach the class?
Well, I guess I am a do-it-yourselfer just like all of the other customers that are coming in here. And so I basically built my house and I've done all the tile jobs with it. I come from more of a science background, but that really helps me when it comes to planning and laying out and coming up with ideas.
Wow, that sounds great. Can you tell me why do you enjoy teaching the classes?
My favorite thing at the Home Depot is to help customers solve their problems. And so when they come in for a class, it's because they need to know how to do it, and I want to make it as easy for them to do and as easy for them to understand as possible. So we're talking now, we're going to go in, we're going to mix up a cement-based thin set to go on top of your vinyl floor. The first thing I'm going to say is you're going to want to get your toilet out of the way. You always have to tile underneath your toilet. You can't tile around it. So we're going to shut off the water. We're going to flush it. We're going to hold the float up until as much of the water is out as possible. Disconnect that water line and remove the 2 bolts that hold the toilet down. And what I'm going to suggest you do is do not dismantle the toilet. If you dismantle it, you need to buy a complete rebuild kit to put it back together. Otherwise, it's going to leak. I pick up the entire toilet tank and I'll move over 1 step and set it inside the bathtub. You, of course, can't do that because your bathtub's coming out too. Okay? But if you set it in there, your mess and your fuss is all inside an area where it doesn't matter. And now you can clean it up when you're done and put it back in. So we're going to clean up that wax ring that was there on the existing. We're going to, if we have quarter round, I'm going to recommend you remove the quarter round from the wall or the cabinet. Your base, you can actually leave if you want to. We're going to raise your floor roughly 5/8 of an inch. So you're removing your base, that's all up to you. If you're going to remove your base, I'm going to ask you to get a wide putty knife. And I want you to slide the putty knife behind the base so now you can get in there with a pry bar or a big screwdriver to begin to pry that wood away, because if you push against your wall without that big putty knife or sheetrock knife in there, you're going to put holes in your wall. The sheetrock's going to collapse. That's going to mean so you can pry that off and remove it if that's the route you decide to go. Now we're going to use a cement base. I have premix thin set that I usually use in a class. The reason we're going to use a cement base is premix cannot be used under anything larger than 16 inches by 16 inches. It is an air-dried product, and if you put it under anything bigger than that, it will never dry, it will never cure. So we're going to have to mix up a cement base. I'm going to recommend that you use a power mixer and that you do it inside a 5-gallon bucket. I would not mix up an entire bag at once. I would pre-cut my boards first to make sure my boards are going to fit my space. I would then mix up, and at this point is where I kind of warn people, if you can mix up enough to do part of the project at a time. The problem with a cement-based product for most homeowners is when you mix it up, it's going to turn into a brick whether you're ready or not. It is cement. Okay? Now I use a tool that I usually recommend everybody get. It's a margin trowel, and it's a very simple little thing. Its purpose is to help you mix or to stir. A cement truck can drive from here to North Branch, and it is still wet cement. And the reason is that drum is constantly turning. So the only way to change the cement process is movement. Adding water does nothing except make it wet. It will not slow the chemical process that's going on. Stirring will. So we reach out, we stir, we scoop out onto our floor. We spread it out with our 1/4 trowel. We put down our cement board. Once you put your cement board down, you'll notice that the black dots point to where the screws would go that will hold this down. So we're going to put the thin set down, and we're going to screw the cement boards down into our subfloor to give them the rigidity they need. Just so you know, that thin set going underneath there is not meant to be the adhesive. You're not necessarily gluing the cement board to your subfloor. The screws are holding it, and we need to screw it down while that cement is flowable underneath there. That's why I don't want you to mix up, put down a whole bunch of boards and screw them down. I want you to do one board at a time. The HardieBacker board here, actually, the screws end up in all of these indentations all the way around the board. There will be 65 screws per board. Actually, that's 56. I backed myself around. 56 screws per board. So now I don't even use my battery drill anymore. Why? Because one time in screwing them all down, the battery goes dead. It's not pulling them down in all the way. You go down the basement, you get the other one, you come back up. By the time I got to that edge, I couldn't pull it down all the way because that cement process was going on the entire time. So I actually use a corded drill, and I would screw them down. I'm going to recommend a coated screw. Now there is a specific screw for each product. The HardieBacker board uses the Baccarin screw, and the Wonderboard or Durarock that we carry down in building materials uses the Baccarin screw. The reason is the thread. This is a large coarse thread meant to cut right through and pull down quick and easy. In the Rock-On screws, it is actually a double thread. So we have a coarse and a fine thread both on there because cement crumbles, and that will give you a better grip and hold in that product also. The reason we're using coated screws, don't use your drywall screws. Cement eats metal. Cement eats almost everything, including skin. So even wearing gloves while you're working with cement product makes great sense to help save those fingertips. So we're going to screw the boards down. We're starting at the back of the bathroom, and we're going to work and screw them down all the way up into the doorway. Okay? Once all of the boards are down, there is only one weak spot left in your floor, and that is the joints between the boards. So at that point, we're going to take our margin trowel once again. We're going to take that cement-based thin set, we're going to force it into those joints, and then we're going to use a cement board tape. Once again, you cannot use your basic drywall tape. The cement will eat the product. This is an alkaline resistant or called cement board tape. And so what we're going to do is now unroll the tape over that joint, and we're going to take enough thin set and force it in just to fill the pores of the tape. We don't have to do the feathering out and stuff like you do with sheetrock because we're going to hide it all under your tile anyways. So we've got our floor prepped and ready for our tile. Do we have any questions at this point?
What would you use for cement instead of the board for your mortar?
Well, if you wanted to build a floor without a cement board, you actually are going to have to go an inch deep with a sand mortar base. So now it is a sand cement mix, and you're going to mix it in a dry mix. You're going to put that out, but now you're going to have to put in leveling rods to make sure that the floor is level, build up, remove the lods, fill in the groove, and make sure that it's level. You're going to have to let that set up for 24 hours before you can go back in there to do your floor. The advantage to the cement boards is that they're quick and simple. We're going to put them in, we're going to screw them down, we're ready to do the floor. And that thin set that I put between, remember I said was not an adhesive, the whole reason for that is any imperfections in that subfloor. For instance, if you have a knot underneath there, you want this to flow, you want this to fill in any voids that are there to give you as rigid a floor as you can get. You want your cement board on your wood floor to be the same as the cement floor underneath us here. Okay? Answer your question? Okay. This comes to the most complicated part of doing your floor now. We've got our cement board down, and now all those thoughts and dreams have to fit the floor. So how are we going to lay our tile? We never begin following a wall. I will tell you right now that the best way to look at your house is that you do not have a straight wall. You do not have a level surface. You do not have a square corner, and you probably don't even have a plumb wall. Wood moves, everything changes. So you're better off just to act like nothing is perfect. I'm going to adjust accordingly and build it so that everything turns out perfect. If you begin following a wall, most of the ones I've seen that do that end up with a nice arc in their tile. So their grout lines tell the story afterwards, okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to measure across the room. So you go into the back of that bathroom, you measure from wall to wall and identify the center. Come back to the other end, measure across, identify center to center. I want you to do a straight line. You could use a chalk line, for instance, snap a chalk line, or you can use a straight edge, and I'm just going to freehand it, so make sure it's straighter than this. I want you to go the other way into that room. So from the front to the back, I want you to identify center, and I want you to identify center, and I want you to draw a straight line across. Here's the only important thing when you do your tile floor. Everything else builds around this. It sounds like it's hard, and it's not. Is that a square corner? How do you know that's a square? Ah, the algebra class that you didn't like. So this is really simple, but it does go all the way back to algebra. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say measure out a known distance here. We're going to call that A. Measure out a known distance here. That would be A also. A second known distance, B. Cross measure the diagonal. Okay? So what we want to do is measure from A to B, A to B. Those two measurements should be exactly the same. If they are, that has to be a 90-degree angle. Okay? It's a 3, 4, 5 rule. 3, 4, that must be 5. However, all floors don't fit 3, 4, 5. So that's why I say just a known distance. Measure that. Okay, this then is a 90-degree angle. We verified that. We know that. So now, how is my tile going to fit my space? If I lay tile from here over, it's tile, 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 2 inch. Tile, 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 2 inch. Maybe I don't want a 2-inch tile along the wall. So I could take this line and measure over exactly 2 inches, 2 inches, reshoot my line. I have now shifted so that 2-inch tile is gone, and I have a 4-inch tile going behind my toilet. Okay? Now we need to look from the front to the back also. So I'm going to do tile, 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 6 inch. Tile, 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 8 inch. How'd I get 8 inches? There's a doorway. Tile has to come into the doorway where your threshold is going to be. So I've added some. So while we're talking about it, what kind of a threshold are you thinking of using? It has an effect on how you finish your floor. Home Depot carries 2 types of thresholds without getting into wood. Wood is always available also, but once again, wood expands and contracts. That tends to break tile and grout, so keep that in mind. This is a marble threshold. You'll notice it's much thicker than most of your tile. The reason being it's natural stone, so it needs to be thicker to give it strength. And what I usually point out when I set up a marble threshold is how wide are your grout lines on your tile? 1/4 inch is what most people do with a 12 by 12 tile. So I would like you to notice that if I set up a 12 by 12 tile with a 1/4 inch grout line, it sort of looks like my threshold is out here by himself. Okay? So what I usually recommend is that we drop that down to an 1/8 of an inch line. I can still use the same grout, but now this became part of my floor. Okay? Comes in white and cream. That's why it's not my most popular threshold. Schluter, on the other hand, now, and this is just a piece of Schluter. Schluter actually comes 8 foot 2.5 inches long. And with Schluter, you spread your thin set. You lay Schluter into your thin set so it's pushing up between and you lay your tile. And now you've protected the edge of that tile. So for most of us, it's going to be carpet over here. Your carpet's going to come right up against Schluter when you're done. You've protected your tile from your vacuum cleaner. So it's a nice, easy, almost invisible one. The other thing I point out, though, if you look at it, you'll notice there's a gap between the edge of Schluter and the tile. Well, that gap is actually planned in. If you look at Schluter, you'll notice the central ridge here actually sticks out farther than the top ridge. The reason being, if you bang against it, we're going to put that pressure deep down here on the tile, so we're not going to be chipping off the top of the tile and creating an eyesore that way, okay? Questions on your thresholds?
Can wood go up to Schluter?
Wood can go up to Schluter, yes. Once again, it's got that edge built into it so it can take some expansion and contraction and not create a real issue. And the other thing that I'll point out with wood, wood tends to expand and contract the way the grain runs. So if the wood piece up against here is running the same way, that's the way it tends to expand and contract more than the other direction. So we're safe there also, okay? While we've got this up, I want to talk one more thing about our threshold spacing. Ideally, a threshold goes underneath the door. When you close the door, you should not see it from either side. It's meant to hide the difference between the two floors. So, I want you to take a tile, put it upside down, right up against your door frame. Take an undercut saw. This happens to be a nice little Irwin saw. We sell these down in hardware. Once again, they're only $12. They have a reversible blade. And I want you to cut off your door jamb. I want you to cut it off deep enough so that it will be where your threshold sets when you're done with your cut. So it's going to be really simple just to cut it off. We know we've got the correct height because of this. And the reason we want to do this, you could do a cut like that on your tile, and you can make it fit up against your door jamb perfectly. However, it will always leave a crack. You'll always see a crack. If you undercut your door jamb, I don't care if you put this crooked on your cut. That tile going underneath always completes the look of it, so you have a very finished, complete look. So it's one little extra tool, but it's going to give you a much better looking project when you're done with it. Okay. Last thing before we lay our tile. Once you lay your tile, you cannot go on it for 24 hours. It cannot support weight until that thin set has set up and cured enough, okay? So, we need to start in the back of the room and work our way out, which means I can't start here on this central line that I drew. That's why I looked at my threshold and how it's going to fit. Do I want a small tile in the back? Maybe not. You can split the difference, have the same on both. I tend to feel like if I've got a smaller tile, I'd rather have her kind of towards the front because my vision always progresses towards the back as I walk into a space, so I'd rather have big tile towards my tub. Once again, we can move the line and adjust for the change in tile size. But more importantly, I need to make this cross line end up 3 feet from the tub. Anybody know why 3 feet? On my hands and knees, I have a 37-inch reach. You're going to be on your hands and knees laying your tile. How far can you reach to set that tile down? So that's why I say within 3 foot of that back wall. So once again, we're going to take an exact measurement, we're going to reset that tile, that line, and that's where we're going to begin laying our tile. For class, like I said, I get to use pre-mixed thin set. This thin set, the nice thing with pre-mix, it's a real slow dry process, so it lasts a long, long time. Now this came in a large bucket that was returned by a customer long, long ago. So this is actually a little drier than I would like it to be, but because I like to save Home Depot money, I'm willing to use it. What we're going to do is take our margin trowel, we're going to reach in, we're going to scoop out thinset, and we're going to put thinset down onto our floor. I am not going to worry. And you notice I'm kind of stirring it down. Normally this would stick immediately, but because, as I said, it's already been air dried, it takes a little encouragement to make it stick down. So, we're going to take that same quarter by quarter by quarter square notch trowel. Now, some trowels get up into size. The question is, what kind of stone am I setting, and therefore how big is it? How much support do I need? So if we're going to be setting an 18 by 18 inch tile, we're going with a 1/2 by 1/2 to give me that support underneath to keep it from breaking. The other thing it gives me is a little more depth to help me level that product. Okay? Quarter by quarter doesn't give me as much leveling capability, but it works really nice on a 12 by 12 tile. A lot of customers would go to a 3/8 inch deep, so quarter by 3/8 to do that. What color grout and what kind of stone are we setting? Are we going to be doing a natural stone, a marble or a granite?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm doing a slate backsplash.
A slate backsplash is a natural stone, but slate is a layered stone, so it's not going to weep color. If we're doing marble, granite, travertine, which is a tumbled marble, or if we're going to have white grout, we have to use a white thinset underneath it. Why? Natural stone will bleed color. So if I put down my pretty white marble, eventually I'm going to see little tiny gray lines about that far apart coming through my stone. Okay? Slate, because it's a layered stone, won't bleed through the same way. And as far as our grout color, I would want a white grout. And the reason being, once again, if this is my trowel pattern, so this is what I'm going to leave on the ground here, I'm going to set a tile on top, which means I would have grout here a 1/4 inch deep. Next would be grout a 1/2 inch deep, and I would have that pattern. A white over gray will not be as pure a white a 1/4 inch deep as it will a 1/2 inch deep, and I would eventually see that pattern running through my grout lines. Okay? So we're going to take our trowel, we're going to set it at a 45-degree angle. The nice thing is, just like the algebra thing, there's no one coming to check on you, so you don't have to worry. 45, we're going to spread that thinset across the space. If you're using a cement-based thinset, which once again we all know now that with a bigger tile we would have to do, I warn you that if it crumbles and sort of falls apart, doesn't stand up, or if it wants to kind of hook and roll along with you, scrape it off, throw it in the garbage, stir your bucket really well, and start over. It has begun to set up. It will not stick to your tile, okay? I do not worry about covering all of the tile when I set up a class like this. At home, you of course have to worry about, you want complete coverage everywhere. All of the books that you read are going to say go in straight lines. I find that difficult to do. You're on your hands and your knees. I'm going to recommend you get some good knee pads. And I find that I can do a really nice arc when I'm on my hands and knees. Once again, what they don't want me to do is to change direction. They don't want me spreading this way and then switching to this way, because I just changed my support point at that joint. Okay? You're going to take an existing brand new tile. Oh, before I do that, I forgot. Let's back up. I'm going to stand this up now to a 90-degree angle. So the 45 spread the product. The 90 is going to rake off the excess. The other thing that the 90 is going to do is get your grout lines back. If you decided to do your grout mark lines in a chalk line, I'd recommend before you do the thin set that you might want to spray over them with a clear lacquer or even a hairspray, something to keep them from mixing in and blending in. So if you've raked correctly, you should be able to see your grout lines come back through your thin set. Oh, yeah. This is not, rocket science. We're not launching anything here. For them to be able to go home and put together a bathroom that meets their goals and makes them happy, that's what fulfills me. Once again, I said that this stuff was already beginning to dry. I shouldn't have spots like this. I should be consistent like this everywhere because this has already begun to dry. It's not the perfect product at this point. It leaves these. If you leave a spot like this and someone walks in there with a high heel shoe on, I used to say a lady, but now it could be anyone, they broke your tile. Okay, the force from that heel will actually break through your tile because there is no support in this spot. Okay?
I'm sorry, can the thin set be curled up like that?
Nope, I said this should not be this way, but because I'm using a kind of dried product, it's giving me that look. It wouldn't hurt just a little bit with a premix. If it's a cement base and it starts wanting to hook and curl, now that needs to be thrown away. That has already set up. And the reason people prefer the premix, it is a lot more costly, but the cleanup is easy and you don't have the time restrictions. A cement-based product, once again, you've got 20 or 30 minutes and it's turning into a brick. Use your margin trowel effectively. I can go out to a 4-hour work time. So with your little margin trowel, you can reach in, you stir your bucket, you scoop out, put it back in the bucket, and you trowel. You need more, you stir, you scoop out. So I can push it out to almost a 4-hour work time with enough stirring. We're going to take that tile, we're going to set it on our lines. We're on our hands and knees, remember. Spread out our hands, we're going to push that down into the thin set. How hard do you push? I don't know. About that hard. So what I want you to do, take your trowel and lift up that first tile. And once again, there should be thin set under all of the tile, but in the sense of timeliness, I don't worry about that during the class. And you see this thin set has begun to dry enough in the bucket alone that it's not adhering well to my tile. But it's showing you the important point that I still have my lines running and I push down hard enough to bring them closer together, but I don't want them to touch. So I went to a 1/4 inch gap. If I can bring that down to 1/8, that's the grip and the hold that I want out of my thin set. And you would reset that tile at home. How wide a grout line are you putting in with your floor? Most people do a 1/4. 1/8 gets pretty narrow with a big tile. And here's the reason that they like a fatter line usually. If you take 2 tiles, the closer they are together, the easier that toe banger catches your foot. If you move it farther apart and you're up a little bit high, your foot tends to accept it better, okay? So for most people with a 12 by 12, they use a 1/4 inch grout line. I, of course, always like to challenge, so I can change the color of any tile you give me to probably 3 different colors depending on the color of grout I use with it. So I can actually pull out a color or suppress a color by the color of grout I use, but I don't want to overpower my floor. I don't want to walk in and just see big grout lines running down through my floor because I used a darker color. My favorite color of grout, just so you know, it's called light smoke. It's the color of dirt. It's always going to be clean, and that's why I like it. And it honestly will go with any tile I've ever put it next to. I have it at home with a basic white tile in my kitchen dining room. So What I usually want people to think about is what about 3/16 for a grout line? Now, a difference is only a 1/16 of an inch, so we're talking about a thumbnail thickness, right? And what I always want to show you is that it's actually a large difference. So by going with a little bit finer line, just a little bit finer, I can go with a bolder color and not necessarily overpower the floor the way the big line does. So for class, I'm going to set my tile down just a little bit closer than my grout line. And I'm going to put in my spacers. And for you, I'm going to do 2 different size grout lines. So don't do this at home. This is for class only. We're taking that next tile. We're going to set it down a little bit closer than my grout line and push it down into my thin set. This is where, if you want to, you can get out your rubber mallet and your hammer. And you can level each tile perfectly. You could set your level on, you tap your corners down until it's perfect. Get as picky as you want to get. I'm usually not that picky, and I'll show you what I usually do. Take this last tile, this is the hardest one, a little bit closer than my grout lines. Push it down in, put in my spacers. I usually verify level with my fingers because as I'm doing this work, I'm actually moving my hands around over the tile, and if I have an edge somewhere, my fingers will find it quicker than a level would. And then I can make that little bit of adjustment to push down a little bit more, or even if I have to lift up, reset that tile, okay? When I was setting down the tile, I said I like to set it a little bit closer than my spacers. Can anybody tell me why?
So your spacers stay tight?
Actually, the thing is if you set the tile down a little bit farther away and pull it back, you're going to push all that thin set up in between there. You don't want thin set in there. That's where your grout is supposed to go. So I always try to set just a little bit closer, knowing I can slide away with ease, but I don't want to push that thin set up in there. Here's another pointer. If you get thin set coming up in between there, we'll go with a 1/4 inch one here. You take your spacer, put it down in and drag it along, and it will clean out that thin set for you because you don't want it in there. Your grout's going there, okay? Questions? No? It's all so simple, isn't it? We began on our lines. Now we're going to build the crudest of pyramids. Yes?
Sorry, I have a question.
Sure.
How long do you have before the thin set really sets?
So if I
Adjust.
use an air-dried product, I have a lot of time.
Okay, a lot of time.
A lot of time.
Okay.
Hours.
Hours, okay.
If I use a cement base, I got 20 or 30 minutes. Okay?
Leave the spacers in there until it's totally dry.
It's all up to you. On a wall, you'd have to leave them in. Gravity doesn't help on a wall. On a floor, you can leave them in. And you notice that I put them in thusly. Why didn't they go in this way?
Can't get them out.
Because I'd be sticking them down in glue, and I can't go back on that floor for 24 hours, and that's going to have to come out of there. We used to sell the tool for people who did that. We no longer sell the tool, so don't do that. Because what happens is you look at this and you think, well, that's down deep underneath there. Who would ever know if I grout over it? When you walk on the floor, these flecks, see? So you're going to bust your grout out in your corners later on. And now you're going to have to cut that grout out, remove it, and then re-grout it. So you're better off, you stand them up, they give you the correct distance. If you need to save money, you can pull them out as you move across the room, out of the room, and reuse them. Just never push the tile back then so that you maintain your lines, okay? So we went from our lines to the tub, as far as we could reach, out to the sides. We go down, 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 all the way to the doorway. At some point in time, we had to cut tile. We're going to cut tile. So what I like to show people is you can cut as you go. Take breaks, run out, cut tile, come back in, lay tile, lay tile. Or if you have to, say, rent a tile saw. Okay, I sell a tile saw, my lowest price is $89. Rental for a day is currently about $63. Or a 4-hour rental is going for about $30. So if you want to rent a saw, you have an option to lay all of your tile on day 1, come back day 2, cut all of your tile, and install it later. The nice thing with tile is as long as you clean up these edges, you can stop anytime you want to. You could go on a cruise and come back, and your floor will sit here and wait for you as long as you've cleaned up your edges so you can start over. Yes?
So do you rent the tile saw at Home Depot?
Home Depot has a tool rental, yes. Sadly, this store does not. This store, as everyone been in the community for a while know, this used to be a Kmart. And so when Home Depot bought it, when Kmart went out, the city fathers did not allow them to expand the footprint of the store. Therefore, they could not fit in a tool rental. And actually, this store is a little smaller than all of our other stores because of that. But the Blaine Home Depot does have a tool rental in it down on the freeway. There's also Rudy's in town. There's Ace Hardware up in North Branch. There's All Season in Lino Lake. So there's a lot of places you can rent a saw. Although I tell you that after you've done your first job and your friends and relatives see it, they'll want you to do theirs also. So buying a saw is not that big a deal. If we decided to rent the saw, you come back day 2, you can now go on your floor, okay? You could not go on it, as I said, for 24 hours because it has to cure enough to support weight. So you can go in, you can remove all of your spacers. And if we were going to rent a saw, this is my little secret here, I would mark my tile day 2. I would go down and rent the saw. I'd come home, go cut, 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 take the saw back. There, I got it for 4 hours. Easily. To do that, the easiest way, you can get out your tape measure, and you can measure for your tile, or you can take a tile, put it on an existing tile, square off your corners, take another tile, set it over to your wall, square off your corners with your tile, take your China marker pencil. Why do I use a China marker pencil? If you're going to use a wet saw, the only way that your mark will stay until you cut it is a China marker pencil. So you could take your ink pen, your pencil, your permanent magic marker, you could mark that line, and that line will be gone before the tile touches the saw blade. Well, you have to remember that saw blade is going in a water bath or a water spray, so it's like putting it in front of a pressure washer, the way that water's coming off, and it will literally blow that line off before you cut your tile. China marker will stay, but a China marker will also clean up easily with a sponge. So it's once again, sold at the Home Depot. It's a nice little addition to make your job easier. So, for class, we don't get to use a wet saw anymore. But I'm going to let you all know that a wet saw is one of the most fun tools you can ever have. It will cut all kinds of tile, glass, and natural stone. As a matter of fact, it's a requirement for natural stone. The only thing that it really can't cut is you. So you can literally use it for Halloween tricks, put your hand right into it. It cannot cut you. Can't be done. If it is dry, if it's running dry, it's going to burn you. Friction is a nasty thing. But what we have is a metal blade with diamond dust on the sides. That's what's going to cut your tile. What kind of tile is easier to cut? Porcelain, natural stone, or ceramic? We all know the difference between ceramic and porcelain? No. Okay. Ceramic tile is made with 80% clay, 20% sand. It's mixed together, it's formed, it's fired, it's glazed, and it's baked. Porcelain is the opposite. So porcelain is 80% sand, 20% clay to hold the sand together. It's formed, it's fired, it's glazed, it's baked. The glaze is the hard part. That's your self-repellent surface. Most of our tiles in the Home Depot now have a minimum of 8 colors and coats of glaze on them to give them a more natural stone look. So the one that's going to chip and break easier is the one made mostly of clay, which is why a lot of people come in looking specifically for porcelain. Porcelain is the hardest of the stones. In other words, it is harder than granite or marble or slate. Natural stone is actually softer and will absorb moisture, where porcelain is the most repellent and the hardest. Okay? Usually, when you see that red color, it's an indication that it's a ceramic tile. A porcelain will actually be closer to this color underneath. It's usually a gray to a cream, and that's because it's primarily sand. There's not as much clay in it. For tile class, I get to use a score cutter. So what we have here is a tungsten wheel underneath here, which is meant to etch the surface of the tile. So we would take our tile, place it in our cutter, line up our marks with the center of the cutter pad, bring it up to make contact, and because this is class, I have to hold my table with my foot. I'm going to push down on this as I push forward. The idea needs, I need to etch that surface. The wheel goes up to a neutral point. There's a little swing arm back here that actually drops down on the tile, and I will cut my tile. This is an art. It takes practice to do it consistently. Luckily for us, it worked out today. Okay? So right down the line, why do I like a wet saw better? It's more fun. It's messier. A wet saw is a lot messier. This can only cut a straight line. That straight line has to go all the way across the tile, and there is never a bathroom made that you don't have to do one of those. I need a wet saw. Or I'm going to go down to hardware and I'm going to pick up a diamond blade that will fit my side grinder, and I can etch that and snap that out of there then. Okay? Secondly, the reason that I make such a difficult cut for class is not to prove that I can do it. It's actually to ask you the question, how am I going to get my thin set in there? Because my trowel doesn't fit. It's because I'm going to teach you how to butter your tile. So you're going to take your thin set, you're going to put it on the back of your tile, you're going to do this 45 just like we did on the floor, you're going to do the 90 just like we did on the floor, and you're going to set your stone. We're leaving a 1/4-inch gap along all walls, cabinets, things made out of wood. Once again, they expand and contract. They'll bust my tile. So I'm leaving that gap. When we're all done, we're going to cover that with 1/4 round to hide it. If you tore off your base, you can try to cover it with your base. But I'm going to say that if you step back about 3 foot from your wall, your base will cover at the corner, and as you get towards the middle, it will not. You'll be able to see a crack because, once again, that whole straight wall syndrome sets in. So you're going to have to add your 1/4 round anyways, which is why back in the beginning I said, yeah, it's just as easy to leave your base. Okay? Bullnose tile. Is the tile going to set on top of it, or am I going to run the floor up to it?
Up to it.
You have those options. If I'm going to run it up to it, now it has to be set to allow for a grout line and the tile. So now my cutting, I would have probably done my wall, my base first, and then laid my tile so I could be more precise in my cutting. Okay? Normally, like if you're doing your shower, you want to shower your wall, then the floor last. It helps you fit those edges, and more importantly, all that mess you spill doesn't have to be cleaned off your tile. These parts will just snap out of there either because of the wet saw or because of your thumb. But what you're going to be left with is a corrugated edge here that's going to be at an angle also. And you can take your tile and you can bring it up into your wet saw and work it exactly like a power sander, and you can go back and forth and until you have a perfect curve. The nice thing about it can't cut you is you can get your fingers in there and do that. You can take a piece of glass that long, reach it up in there and cut it in half and not worry about your fingers, okay? So we do all those cuts. To do a toilet flange is going to take you somewhere between 3.5 to 4 hours. Here's the important question, and I've done this for customers that wanted it done. The important thing is you're going to set a toilet over this. And as long as the toilet sets on tile, who cares about that perfect cut underneath there? The only one that would ever know is you and the plumber that has to fix stuff later on. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to do an L cut. Oh, maybe we can cut an angle. So we're going to do the easiest cuts to fit around the flange. And then when we're ready, we're going to reset the toilet on here. Questions? All right, boy, this is a good group. They're learning fast. Grout. Once again, I get to use pre-mixed grout for class because that way you don't have to sit through me mixing. Now, I will point out that my grouts are all a pre-fortified, and most of my thin sets are, so you don't need to buy fortifiers, you don't need to buy hardeners. You just mix them up with water and they're ready to go. Contractor. Contractor's going to hate premixed because he doesn't read directions. When this came out, it was originally called stain proof. It was guaranteed to not stain, mold, or mildew for 25 years. Contractors came in and bought it because the customers heard about it on the radio. They were all excited. And a contractor will take and he will spread thin set across his tile job as fast as he can, cleaning off waste, and he'll just move on, start at one end, do the whole room, get up. Now he's going to come back in and clean. Premix doesn't work that way. So that's where contractors got really mad. They were back in wanting to know what was wrong. They could not clean it off the floors. Premix dries quickly. So we need a round edge sponge. Not a typical household sponge. All edges, all directions are round and curved. The reason being we don't want square edges that can cut into our grout and dig it out. I actually prefer the one that's got the scouring pad on the back side. So as you can see, if I need to scrub, I've got it right in my hand. I just flip it over and scrub. You're going to need a bucket of clean water. So we're going to go in. We're getting ready to grout. I'm going to have my grout, my sponge, my bucket. We're going to dip the sponge in and get it damp. I never want dripping water falling all over my floor. When it comes to grout, if you mix up a cement-based grout and you mix it up too wet to make it easier so it flows easier, it will dry chalky. The top will look just like a white chalk. I don't care if you started out with charcoal, the top, because it will settle as it sets up. Too much water on this will soften and darken. Okay? So we don't want it too wet. We got our damp sponge. We have our float. And as I said, a contractor would use a float like this. I tend to go with the smaller one. Partly my elbow from years of this is hard on the elbow. This one, though, the way I hold it becomes an extension of my hand. And I take the premixed grout.
Steve, what is that called again?
A float. It's actually a rubber product, so it compresses. And the idea being, as you spread across your stone, you don't want to scratch your stone. So you want something with a compression in it. You have a choice in your grout whether you're using a sanded or a non-sanded. Sanded's going to scratch easier than non-sanded. But the choice comes down to how fat were those grout lines. Non-sanded is from 1/8 of an inch and narrower. Sanded is for 1/8 of an inch and wider. Why? If you mix up cement, it gets rock hard, right? If you did that in a cake pan and it was pure cement, you could come back a couple days later and you could bust that all into pieces and crumble it right back into dust. It needs something to cling to give it body and strength. The floor in the Home Depot here, it is a cement floor, but the truth is it's concrete. It had to have sand and stone added to it to give the cement something to bond to. The same is true in your grout. But if you have sand, you can't get in those real thin 1/16 inch lines because the sand won't fit. So we have non-sanded for the thin, and then we've added sand for the thicker lines. Okay? 1/8 of an inch is the dividing point. Either one goes either way. If you pick up a mosaic, for instance, you're going to say, oh, well, that's 1/8 of an inch everywhere. And the only thing I would say is, yeah, except the diagonal in the corners is over 1/8. So I tend to go sanded.
What if it's a glass tile?
Glass tile, you're either going to use non-sanded because all glass tile is going to have 1/8 or under, or better yet, you're going to use pre-mixed. Pre-mixed doesn't care if it's sanded or not. It will give somewhat of a sand texture, but it's not sand. So we're going to force the grout into our grout lines. Everything we do should be at circles and angles, but you notice I spend a lot of time working on the tip. Why do we do circles and angles?
Make sure you fill it all in completely.
Yes, but actually the whole idea being if I come straight across, I just dug out the grout that I've been putting in there. So circles and angles helps me avoid that problem. And I said, using a pre-mixed, we would want our bucket of water to be with us. Using a cement base, we're going to do the floor. We've got 20 or 30 minutes, and we need to be back cleaning it because it's turning into a brick on us. Okay? The reason we're going to have our bucket with us with a pre-mixed, that thin film that we've left on the edges that we've scraped off, that's going to dry really quick. That's going to hold on really, really tight. So I tell everybody you work a 3x3 area. You're on your hands and knees. If you have to move, it's time to clean. Clean before you move. Start your next section. So circular wash. Circular wash, anybody know why?
Don't dig out the grout.
Correct. If I go with it, I'm going to make it deeper in one direction, not the other. And if I go across, I'm going to pile up one side and have a drop on the other. So the circular gives me an even position. The other thing then is the harder I push, the deeper the bevel becomes. Nobody likes the bevel because it's always, all the dirt's always in there, right? It's where it's supposed to be. That's why the bevel. If dirt lays on the surface and you walk on it, it's going to score the surface of your stone. If it rolls with the air movement and falls into little grooves, it's out of the way, but then it has to be cleaned. So we're going to wash that area until we get it clean. The struggle we have is as we do, we're now cleaning with dirty water. When I get it so I think it's as clean as it can be, and it's not that way yet, but I'm moving along as quick as I can here, I take my sponge, I wring it out dry, and I slide it across the tile. I don't put down pressure. I'm just going to slide it across, and the reason that I want to do that is to pick up that dirty water. It's called grout haze. If you leave that on your tile, it becomes part of your tile. You move over, you do your next section 3x3, your next section 3x3, and you move through the space. When you're all done, clean up everything, I want you to come back and clean this floor 6 or 8 hours later. If we did a cement-based grout, we came in, immediately, clean the entire floor. Once again, we're coming back 6 or 8 hours later, and we're cleaning it again. This is your last chance. Anything that's there you want off then, so if you need to scour, use it. Do not use the Scotch Brite or the 3M things. If you do, it has to be an invisible color, or your sanded grout will hold little fibers of whatever you use. So yeah, you get a little blue or green flecks all over everything, okay? If things stick a little too much, cheesecloth is another thing we sell because of the fiber of the cheesecloth. It can cut and clean up a lot easier, okay? We've moved and moved and moved. We got the whole floor down. We've come back. We've done our cleanup. If it is a cement-based product, it needs to be sealed. If it is pre-mixed, it's self-sealing. That's why I said for your glass, pre-mix makes it really nice. Backsplashes, pre-mix makes it really nice. It's pre-sealed, it's pre-repellent. If we use a natural stone though, where we wanted to go with a cement-based grout, we're gonna seal everything. I always bring out 2 sealers, mostly to show that there is sometimes value based on pricing. This product here sells on the back wall for $9.99. It's a penetrating sealer. This one is $26 and change. Penetrating sealer. The difference between them is if you read the labels, this has a 20-year guarantee. This doesn't say it even has one. If you go online and check, it will say 1 to 2 years. Okay, so the extra money sometimes is worth it. If we looked at my thin sets, the one most people would use, pre-fortified, $13 a bag. Right next to it is super fortified, $32 a bag. Super fortified is called crack prevention. Put that on your cement floor, following its directions. You should never worry about those cracks coming through into your tile. It is fortified better than you or I could do alone, okay? So that's why I like to show the 2 different ones. The cute little sprayers are nice. However, glazed tile, you don't seal the glaze. If you put a penetrating sealer on your glazed tile, it's going to give it a foggy or a smoky hue. That's going to be really hard to get off. So I usually recommend, if we're doing sealing, applicators. If we're doing your shower walls, your backsplash, I would pour it into here rather than spraying it, because once again, if I spray it on the tile or the glass, I need to clean it off. Put it in here, and I just take the brush and I can paint along and do my lines. Now we can use a paint brush if we want to. I usually refer to that as dippy paint, because I'm going to dip and paint, and I'm going to dip and paint. I find it difficult to accomplish. And for sure on a floor, I can't dippy paint a floor. I've never made it through a floor. I have to get up and leave. I use an applicator. Pour it in here. The rattle is actually a different size roller, so depending on my grout line, I have choices. I fill this up. I then tape this to a broom handle or a stick or a yardstick, and I literally walk it across my room back and forth, so I don't have to get down on my hands and knees and crawl around, and I seal my grout lines. Sealer, follow the directions on the bottle. Most of them are going to say 2 coats an hour apart. I always bring this out because the important thing for you is once you've completed your project, how are you going to clean and maintain it? If you've sealed your grout, so it's not a pre-mixed product, or you've sealed your natural stone, a cleaner with an acid base or an ammonia base will break down your seal. So we all like to use the Mr. Clean, the Lysol, spick and spans. They smell clean. We like that. They will break down your seal. You use a 10% vinegar and water, or you use a tile and grout cleaner so that you can maintain your seal. How do you check your seal? Okay, I'll tell you. Take a puddle of water. Take your little glass of water, something in there, pour it on your grout line. Just a little spot size of a quarter. There it is. It's going to be a bubble. Walk away. Come back 20 minutes or so. Is there still a bubble? If there's still a bubble, your seal's intact. If there's a damp spot because it is sunk in, you better reseal. Okay?
What about if you're trying to check a shower, but on like a wall?
The problem here is still you need to be able to find somewhat of a horizontal surface or the water's just going to run down the wall. So it's very difficult to do. If you wanted to take a piece of your chewing gum, chew it up, stick it there, put the puddle of water and let your gum hold it until you come back, you could check that way. But it's difficult to check a vertical wall. What I usually recommend, we also sell cleaners that are cleaners and resealers. You know, if I used a sealer that had a 20-year guarantee, I'd be worrying about my seal probably 10 years down the road. The guarantee is the same here as it is when you buy a car or anything else that lasts till you cross the curb. I would always check. And if I couldn't check, I would reseal. The worst you're going to do is spend the money and it's going to go down the drain. So we're going to do that shower. And here's my tips for the guy who wants to do the shower. I sell a book first off. Home Depot has do-it-yourself books that can take you through step by step of each process in a pretty clean, concise way. So to do a pan, if we're doing our own pan, I would take you to that book and say, this is going to show you how to frame it and how to build a concrete base. The important step that most people neglect is they're going to do this in their basement. They've already got a cement floor, so why do I need to do a cement base? Because you need a slope to your floor. So you need to slope your base to your drain because otherwise the water is going to sit back here in a corner and grow mold underneath your tile. So we want to slope that floor with a cement sand mortar base once again. We want to do a pan liner over it to make sure that moisture goes down the drain. And then we'll do another layer of cement over the top of that. Once the pan liner folds up and staples to the wood framing to hold it in place. Once we've verified we don't have leaks, we do the cement bed over it. At that point, I drop poly down my studs. So if we're going to put cement board on a wall for a shower, my recommendation, put poly on the studs first. It costs almost nothing, and it's just another way to protect yourself. Let it fall down inside the shower pan, or if we're doing it around the tub, let it fall down inside the tub. Put up the cement board. Now we want to tape our joints. So once again, we need a little bit of a cement-based thin set. Force it in. Why do we need cement-based? Well, I'm dealing with cement board, but a pre-mixed product, so okay, pre-mixed thin set, pre-mixed grout, cannot be used where there could be standing water. They will re-emulsify, soften, okay? So we must use a cement-based product because water will have no effect on it. And yet on the wall, if I'm filling a joint, water will go directly through it. It won't hold it up. So we're going to force the cement product in, tape over just like we did with the floor, and we've reached that point. Okay? Now, I usually recommend if you're going to do a wall, especially a shower, I want to slow you down one day. I want your project to take 3 days, not 2, sorry. Reason being, that whole plumb wall thing, square corner thing, they don't exist. I have gone into many people's houses where they do their own shower and they say, yeah, doesn't it look nice? And I'm like, yeah, started on that wall, huh? Okay, because if your wall's not plumb, all your grout lines, and the grout lines are the thing that get you. So what I want you to do is I want you to take a board and I want you to, a 5-foot tub or shower, 5-foot board, tile and a grout line. So you mark them on the board, tile and grout line, tile and grout line, tile, all the way across. You got over here to the other side and you've got a 4-inch piece left over. Split the difference, cut it off 2 inches. Throw it away. Now, I want you to take that board, and how high you're going to tile is up to you. I don't care if you're going to the ceiling or if you're going 6 foot. I want you to figure tile down, 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 down to the floor or the tub. Where's that first grout line going to be? Identify the first grout line. Take your ledger board, as it were, screw it to the wall. Bring that 2-inch piece over tight, leave a 2-inch hole on the side, screw it in perfectly level. Do the same with the board on this side, the same with the board on this side. Pick a central line on that board and do a plumb line on the wall. We all know what a plumb line is? You can use a level to do the same thing, set your level up. You just want straight and true line. Build a pyramid. On the board, start at that central line, and I want you to build up and I want you to build out. All of your cuts take place on the outer edge. But that way, if this wall is leaning out a little bit and this wall is leaning out a lot, your cuts make that up on those corner pieces. And you're going to do the same on this edge. If you're starting with a bull nose, you need to plan from the bull nose back, or you're going to use a Schluter. Schluter makes rounded edges to complete off tile also. You do the same over here, and now we've done it all. You come back tomorrow, pull off the board, and you can cut each tile exactly to fit perfectly within there, okay? Grout it, it's all done. Corners, very often, people prefer to caulk. Once again, the walls can move, that's your weak spot. If you've taped it, you should be safe. If you get a crack, I do sell caulking that matches a lot of our grout, okay? If we're doing our backsplash, so we have our painted kitchen, it's an old house, we want to update it. My only question is, how shiny is the paint? If it's a shiny paint, I'm going to either want you to paint an adhesive primer over it, or I'm going to want you to roughen it up a little bit, little sandpaper or something. Shiny paint is meant to stay clean by repellency. I don't want to repel an adhesive. And if you're doing your backsplash, Home Depot has another product. Simple Mat. Easy way to do a backsplash. So you can take a mastic, okay? A mastic is an adhesive you trowel out similar to a thin set. And you can trowel that out and set your tile. Use your spacers like we did on the floor, but now gravity's not going to help you. Or you can use Simple Mat. So, Simple Mat is a pre-adhesive mat. The biggest struggle with it usually for me is getting the back to come off, especially after I cut it. Does that seem sticky to you? Yep. Okay, so I'm going to suggest before we stick these on the wall, we do the plumb lines underneath there. We want to build from the outside to the corner, always from the outside to the corner, so any of our funny cuts end up in the corner. Plumb lines. Most of the time, if we're dealing with a mosaic or glass mosaic or something, we're dealing with 12 by 12 sheets. So a plumb line every 2 foot or so helps make sure that we're maintaining the direction of the tile so we're not getting that lean. You get that on the wall, and I would take one of these and I would stick it down on my wall. Take your float, go over it, push it down good and tight to make sure there are no air bubbles behind it. We want the entire mat. So it's like doing a window film where you'd squeegee out the air bubbles. Same idea. We want this in nice and tight on the wall. You're now going to take a tile Mosaics work really nice because you can adjust the size and the style by cutting the mesh on the back. So, we peel off the surface coat, which I've already done. Take your mosaic, stick it down, stick it on. I don't stick real hard, reason being I want you eventually to stand back and make sure we're staying in with our plumb. Make sure that things are lined up to look square. If you don't stick down real hard, you can peel it off and re-stick it. Take your next mosaic. You can eyeball this space or you can use spacers once again. Put them down. When you have all your mosaic down, I want you to take a float, push it in real hard into that, and now you can grout it. It's the advantage to using the Simple Mat is once again I can do my backsplash in a day because I can stick the adhesive up, stick the tile on, and now I can turn around, grout it same day. I, of course, once again, always like the pre-mix grout. Same idea. We're going to force the grout down in. Clean off extra. And the same rule I'm going to say is going to apply. I want you to do a 3-foot area. If you have to move, clean first. Okay, so your bucket of water is with you and your sponge. And we're going to do that circular wash and clean off our messy grout. Same idea as before. You're going to get it as clean as you can. Move over, do your next 3-foot section. Clean, move. Come back 6 or 8 hours later, clean it all again, and you're all done. So the nice thing with Simple Mat is I can actually do it in one day. The biggest problem now you're going to run into is your electrical outlets because you've just added depth with your tile. So how am I going to get those covers to go back on and do that? Luckily, we sell another product. It's in our electrical department. We carry it in flooring also. And what we have here is spacers. So you can actually fold these together and end up with something that will slide right over the screws to drop in. So you back your receptacle out, put your spacers down in, tighten your receptacle against your spacer, reset your cover plate. Simple and easy. Don't have to go through the whole box extension program or any of that anymore, so it's an easy way to do it. Questions?
Yeah, can you use the tile setting mat for the light glass tiles?
Yes. Most glass tile now comes with a white back on it so that they don't show through. A mastic is always white because if you're using a colored glass without a white back on it, you could see through the glass to see it was back there, which is why they went with the white mastics, was to help hide it. The mats are almost invisible at this point in time, but most glass is now coming with a white back on it to give it that opaqueness that you need. The Simple Mat also says you can now be used in a shower, so you could actually do your shower. The problem is we're talking $20 for 10 square feet. So to me, it's not cost effective that way. But for a backsplash, a lot of ladies come in, they pick up their stuff, they go home because husband's going up for fishing or for hunting, and we're going to get her done this weekend before he gets home. Other questions? No? All right. Well, if you, huh? I'll show it to you down here. It's down on the end of the aisle, and I'll show you before you take off today. I want you to know that you're welcome back anytime, either to go through class or just to come in individually. The employees in our departments are knowledgeable enough to go over anything with you to help you with your projects. And that doesn't just in flooring, that's in any department in the store. We do have employees who can help you with your project, show you the stuff you need to get it done and walk you through it. So you're welcome back anytime. We encourage you to come back and let us know how your projects are going or what we can do to help, okay? Thanks for stopping in today. I'm glad you could make it to the Forest Lake Home Depot. Show you that book. The best compliment for me is when a customer comes back and said, it worked exactly like you said. It turned out perfect. Here's the pictures on my phone to show you. Now I feel like I've accomplished my goal.